Spencer, it is great to have you on the show again. Remind everybody who you are and what you do for a living.
Andy, so great to be back. My name is Spencer Coursen. I am a threat management expert, founder of Coursen Security Group, author of The Safety Trap, and my firm specializes in helping good people to make bad things better.
Excellent. I like that. That's a great line of accountability there. Today, we're talking about a real heavy subject. And before we get into that heavy subject, I really want to ask a question that I know a lot of people have, and that is, how is Ronan doing?
Ronan is great. He is sleeping right now downstairs. He got his hour-long workout in this morning along with myself. He's great. I've got some photos of us right here.
I saw that in the background.
He's doing great. He is literally the best dog ever.
Very cool.
Hands down, my healthiest relationship.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And he lets you know when crackheads are trying to get into your house.
Yeah, listen, a Remington and a Ronan, best home security money can buy.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so when it comes to school safety, you know, a lot of us as protector parents, this is something that is heavy on our minds. As a matter of fact, I just dropped my son off this week to start school back, and it's always kind of nervous because you're like, is my kid going to do okay? Are they going to learn? Are they going to make friends and all of that? And so as parents, we do understand that bad things happen to good people and bad things happen in places where we don't think they should ever happen. So should we even be talking about school safety with our children to begin with? Or do we just need to be quiet about it and not give them this extra stressor? And aren't the teachers just going to tell these guys what to do if there's a really bad case scenario happening at their school?
Yeah, I think we never want to just like hope is not a strategy. We, regardless of circumstance or scenario, we always want to empower not just ourselves, but our children, our loved ones, our friends, our family with the best practices that they can employ to succeed in staying safe. Now, to be perfectly honest, the likelihood of your son or daughter being caught up in an active shooter engagement in their school is very low. But the reality is also that when that is happening, it's 100%. And so when it is happening, you want to be sure, you want to be certain that not only do you understand what the protocols and the strategies and the implementations that your school will provide for your child, but that your child also has your permission to participate in their own protection. So that if they feel that they are unsafe, or that if they are unsure that what they are being told to do is the right thing for them to do, that they have your permission to be disagreeable, to not follow the instruction of their teachers, and to put as much time and distance between them and whatever perceived threat they believe to be actionable. Because what you don't want to do is just assume that the teachers are well trained, that the school has a good plan in place, and then hope that your child will be safe in their custody, and then be proven wrong.
Right.
So the more that we can, awareness plus preparation equals safety. The more aware we are of the realistic risks, the more prepared we can be, and we can prepare our children to be, to prevent those risks from becoming a reality. Because the job of a school is to educate your children and to account for their where-beings, and to account for where they are during that process. But educators are not protectors, and we cannot expect educators to be protectors. But because they are not protectors and because they are educators, their sole focus will almost always be on accountability versus survivability. And those two verticals are hard to bridge sometimes. Much easier in small groups, 5, 6, 10 people. But when you have pockets of 20, 15, 30 kids interdispersed among a much larger ecosystem, that can be a really difficult task for any organization to undertake. And therefore, the onus, for staying safe really does come down to the individual. And so, we don't want to scare our children. We don't want to indoctrinate them into a culture of fear. But what we do want to do is empower them with practical, realistic, employable skills that they can not just use today, but that they can build upon as their life continues.
Right. And I want to kind of clarify something that you said. You said that teachers are not protectors. And you can say that because both of your parents were educators, right? This is something that you got to see up close.
Both. In fact, the tragedy at Sandy Hook was ultimately the catalyst for me leaving the firm with whom I was employed and starting my own business, because both of my parents were teachers. And I have family and friends who still teach. I have an uncle who's a superintendent. I have a cousin who's a principal. I have a niece who's a teacher. And when you have family and friends reaching out to you, asking for help, you want to do everything you can to assist them. And yeah, I mean, listen, my parents were phenomenal educators, but they were not trained protectors. And we cannot expect those who we want to instill our children with confidence and learning how to learn, to also then put on the Rambo hat in the event that that unforeseeable circumstance should arise. It's not realistic. I would not ask my mechanic to also bake me a souffle because I get hungry when I'm at the auto shop.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. And we're already expecting so much of our teachers as it is, especially in a pandemic right now, that it's also
Right.
having them put on the Rambo hat is probably a little too far and out of their comfort zone. Because if they felt comfortable wearing a Rambo hat, they would be doing that as their profession, not necessarily, being an educator. So
Right.
it's a very
Right.
important distinction to make there. So hearing everything that you just said, here is when I read your book, man, it was really good. It's called The Safety Trap. In the back, you talked about threat assessments, and one of them specifically was for a school and what to do. And your perspective there, I had learned for myself, and I was so happy to hear you saying it and talking about it in your book. So I'll ask you the big question here.
Sure.
Are public schools capable of keeping our kids safe?
No, they're not. And nor should we expect them to be. We should not expect schools to be able to keep our children safe any more than we should expect a mall to be able to keep us safe, or a movie theater to be able to keep us safe. We go to the movies to be entertained. We go to the mall to engage in commerce. We go to school to learn. We do not go to these places to be protected. So to the extent that these schools, malls, office parks, movie theaters, what have you, have, certain protocols in place, many of those protocols are in place to protect that organization. And to the extent that those organizational traits can also extend to, aid in an investigation after something happens, great. But to expect, it's kind of like, you don't put the Ring camera on your front door to protect the mailman. You put the Ring camera on your front door to protect your house. To the extent that it can help protect the mailman, great. Schools, what they mostly do is, they focus more on what to do after something happens rather than preventing that something from happening. And I think that the more that, if schools really wanted to focus more on helping to solve the active shooter concern, what they would really do is implement a program of emotional intelligence training, of meditation, of mindfulness, of emotional support, so that you're helping everyone. And really almost, listen, one of the for those who want to commit suicide, or for those who want to commit a violent act, or who have harmful ideations of doing so, one of the number one reasons, or actually the number one reason why they did not carry out that act, was an act of kindness, was someone reaching out to them and saying, hey, are you okay? What's going on? And the more that schools, and here's the thing, most children don't have the emotional intelligence to ask for help. They're coming out of especially now, coming out of quarantine, and where child abuse and substance abuse and domestic violence and intimate partner violence were rampant, and like just really went through the roof in the house.
Right,
They may
exactly.
not have the emotional wherewithal to understand that dynamic. And now they're coming into a school. And so they may be acting out because they don't know any other way to get the attention they need to address that concern. And then if we just turn around and put that child into detention, make that act punitive, we're basically just saying to them, you know what, sit here, be quiet. We don't want to hear from you here either. And then all we're really doing is adding fuel to that fire that's burning up inside of them. Because one of the reasons that students attack their schools is because that's where a grievance is first born, where the ideation that they can do something about it is first realized, where the research and planning of that act is disguised, camouflaged by their everyday activity, where they don't really need to breach any kind of security confine because they're supposed to be there. And then the last thing we're really hearing is the gunshots firing, can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
And so the more that we can adopt I have a phrase in the book that sometimes our willingness to help another is the first step to saving ourselves. And I really think that the more that we can implement more compassion and more understanding and more concern to those who are exhibiting these pre-incident indicators of harmful ideation, that leakage, the more we can address those problems before they occur. And listen, 90% of the people, 95, 97, 99% of the people that you help in that program were never going to be violent offenders in the first place. But if you can stop that one child while also helping the other 99, that's a day well done. That's what schools are supposed to do. That's what, when we send our kids to school and we expect teachers to protect us, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about becoming John Rambo and arming up and going out to confront the enemy wherever the enemy decides to initiate their act of violence. What we are asking them to do is be as compassionate to our children at school as parents are being to them at home.
I like that, because you are really talking about stopping the problem before it ever gets started. Let's not put ourselves in a position where we have to take action against a student who's decided to become violent, who's become an active shooter, or has decided to commit suicide at school. We need to actually work the mental health side of this issue instead of just clamping down with a piece of legislation or on this one idea that if something goes wrong, I have to do something about it. Let's just take a small step every day to make sure that everybody's okay. And that's really what's going to help protect our schools in the long run.
Absolutely. And because look, it's not like these violent offenders, wake up one day and just decide to break bad. There are always behavioral anomalies which exist and which are identifiable and which are recognizable days, weeks, months leading up to that event. And which is why after each one of those events, you always hear people saying, oh yeah, like he was doing this and he was doing that, and I heard this and I heard that. But everyone just kind of wants to shirk their responsibility. Everyone thinks that it's the responsibility of someone else. No, the responsibility is yours. If you see, and especially with children going back into school, like a small act of kindness goes such a long way. Because like I said before, like with that act of kindness, it may be nothing to you, but it could be everything to them.
Right.
And I think the more that we can teach our children to try to be a little bit more compassionate and try to ask that kid what's going on. And, you don't need to be like a social worker for your entire community. But, if you see a student who's like comes into class and is like banging their stuff down, be like, hey, are you okay? Like, do you need help? Do you want to talk about it? What's going on? Like, I'm your friend. I'm here for you. Rather than going off and snickering to your other friends in the corner about, what an idiot someone is being.
Right. And my son just started back to school. and I was coaching him on, because he and like so many other kids, want to make friends and they want to be on good terms. And he is such my kid, Spencer, because like on the first day of school, he was like, I need to figure out who's going to be good and who's going to be bad. And I'm like, okay, so you're just going to sit back and you're just going to observe the environment
Mm-hmm.
here. I was like, okay, this is good, but I'm also like, man, is he listening to the show and I don't know it? But I'm coaching him on telling him you don't have to be friends with every single person in the room, but you need to be friendly to everybody in the room to make sure that you're
Yes.
on a good terms with everybody, not just to make sure that you're making the weird kid in the class is not going to break bad with you. It's mainly just because you need to be a well-rounded person. You need to be able to build rapport with people who are not like you, and you need to be able to carry on a conversation who doesn't look or dress or think like you, just to better promote a better community.
Yeah, listen, man, like so much of being a tribe, of being a community is grounded in being recognized. And sometimes just making eye contact and offering a smile. Sometimes just saying like, "Hey, how are you?" To a stranger on the street. Like sometimes that's the only positive interaction that person may have that entire day.
Mhm.
And that and having that, like again, may be nothing to you, but could be everything to them. Could be what helps them get through the rest of that day. And like I said, like this isn't about being a social worker or
Mhm.
going out and overextending yourself to everyone around you, but you know being present and being engaged in the world that's around us, whether that be walking down the hallway of our school or walking through the parking lot after we go to the grocery store, you know, engages us in the world around it engages us in the world around us. And not only does it make us an active participant in our own protection, but it reduces our likelihood of being targeted by those who may want to do us harm, because they see that we're active and engaged and present and cognizant of our surroundings, which ultimately lowers their likelihood of success in trying to harm us.
Excellent. So I really like your proactive approach to making sure that everybody's happy. You've got a good, positive community. And while that sounds sort of utopian, we know that humans are going to be humans and things are going to happen. Somebody is going to break bad somewhere. So,
Yes.
in thinking about active shooter situations in schools, does run, hide, fight just solve this problem?
No. So if run, hide, fight was being implemented as run, hide, fight was conceived, it would
Mhm.
be great, but it's not. Quick refresher on how run, hide, fight came to be. Run, hide,
Sure.
fight was born of military application for special operations community and pilots who may have found themselves behind enemy lines and captured and became a prisoner of war. If you were able to escape, great. You want to then put as much time and distance between you and the enemy as possible. So you're running, you run. Then maybe you're too tired and you need to stop and regain your strength and catch your breath. Okay, you're going to camouflage yourself. You're going to hide. You're going to, do what you can to not make yourself an obvious target. Then once you get your energy back, you're going to get up and you're going to run some more, getting yourself to friendly forces as fast as you can. Now, in the course of that act, should you be confronted by the enemy, you are going to fight like your life depends on it, because it absolutely does. So what happened was they tried to take this very individualized course of action and replicate it to the masses.
Yeah.
So run, hide, fight is great for an individual, but it is a horrible idea for a collective. And we see this in schools, because what has basically happened in schools is run, hide, fight has become run to your hiding spot, which is not at all what it was ever meant to be. Because here's the thing, an active fire in a building is just as deadly and as dangerous as an active shooter. But we would not hide from a fire in hope that it wouldn't find us. We would run. Like life and death is not a game of hide and seek. Sheltering in place is great if the threat is outside the building. If there's a robbery down the street and the cops are engaged in a standoff or a hostage negotiation or whatever, yeah, you want to keep the kids inside the school. If there's a hurricane or falling trees or a tornado coming, you want to stay inside the school because that's where it's safe. safe haven.
Mhm.
But if the threat is breached your safe haven, you don't want to stay in there. You want to get out because one, most people who attack schools or buildings with that are intimately familiar with the layouts and have very often
Right.
participated in the very plans that are meant to thwart them. So they've only just incorporated those insights into their own attack plan to make their attack plan much more successful. But also, schools are not designed to be fortified structures. Like bullets travel through doors and windows. So just because you're hiding in a corner and you think like the bad guy can't see you, doesn't mean that they don't know you're there and can't either have brought weaponry that is capable of firing through those doors and windows or some other aspect of their attack plan. So no, run, hide, fight is a horrible idea, which is, I still to this day do not understand why that is the doctrine of the day. Like if I would much rather see schools implement, like emergency doors or airplane style like exit slides, so that if something happened, you could immediately disperse everyone out. Because I guarantee you, putting those emergency doors in every classroom would be considerably cheaper than all of these, oh no, we're going to get bulletproof blackboards throughout the community, or we're going to, a fog fills the hallways if we think that they're like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
this is not practical. This is not realistic. This is not anything that's going to help you to succeed in staying safe. What you're doing is you're promoting a false sense of security on the evening news so that you can basically just instill others with a false sense of security. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Right. I really, really like your idea of the airplane slide and having an emergency door in every room. I think that is fantastic. And I also think the kids would like actually sliding down that. Can you imagine doing those drills? Everybody's like, hey, we're going to go down the slide. This is going to be great.
Right. But then
Yeah.
not just run down the side, like identify where you're going to go, because how many, like, and here's the other thing, like, you don't need to attack the inside of the school. You just need to get everyone to go to their evacuation point, because
Right.
go on social media and look at everyone's fire drill plan, where they basically take everyone from their individualized pockets of protection and then bring them to, we're going to go to the stadium. We're going to go to the bus parking lot. We're going to go to this. We're going to go to that. So now you've just basically shown, okay, all I need is a decoy, and then I can literally just bring everyone out to where they're everyone's together in literally a turkey shoot.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Never go to the evacuation zone. Always disperse. And if you have those slides in place, now everyone's pre-positioned to go to all of their identifiable safe havens. Like that one teacher, I think it was in Indiana. She was like, hey, listen, you're going to follow me. We're going right now. This is where we're going. Like, we're not staying here. We're getting out. Let's go. And led her children to safety, and then had the wherewithal to come back and give that attacker the emotional support that they needed, literally by giving her a hug, and was able to disarm her in that way. But that's an outlier event. You cannot expect for every teacher to act in that fashion, because if it did, it wouldn't have made the evening news.
Right. A lot of people don't realize the original plan, and I'm not glorifying the situation at all. The original plan for the attackers on Columbine High School was to cause explosions inside the school and then have everybody run out. And then they were going to pick people off as they were coming out. And, and that was their original intent. And so you make a good point. So if there is, well, if there is a situation where our kids do have to flee the school because there is an active shooter inside, which we have already said is a very slim chance of ever happening in the first place.
Right.
Where do our kids need to go? Do they go to these rally points, or do you tell them they need to go
So I think
else?
that every family should have those places pre-identified themselves, so that your child knows where, your child has a plan. They know where to go. They know what to do. They know how to get there. So, and that's where you as a parent, and again, if your child's in first grade, maybe you just have them follow the teacher's discretion. But if they're in, say, sixth grade, maybe you tell them to follow their own discretion. And maybe that's, hey, I'm going to go to the Starbucks, or I'm going to go to the mall, or I'm going to go to my friend's house, or I'm going to come home. whatever it is. But anywhere they can go where they know they can be safe. Running to a restaurant is great because a restaurant's going to have food and water and a bathroom and at least hardline phone and internet and other people who are trusted in the community that can save you. Run to a police department, run to your local library. There's a million places you can go, but have your child know where to go before that happens so that your child can tell you that that's where they're going to go. And then, there are like certain apps that you can put on, like What 3 Words, so that your child can ping you their exact location. You familiar with the What 3 Words app?
I am, but please explain it to everybody.
Yeah. So, and actually I learned about this through Clint Emerson when I was doing his podcast. So What 3 Words, and again, not an ad, not a sponsor or anything, but What 3 Words is an application where this team divided the entire globe into 10-foot squares and then gave each one of those squares a 3-word identifier. So if you're, say, in a park and something happens to you and you call 911 and they say, oh, I'm at this park or I'm on this running trail, they're only going to know the physical address of that park. And even if they can triangulate your phone, depending on how far away the cell towers are, they may only know to where you are within anywhere from like 25 meters to 500 meters. So that's 5 football field radius. Yeah. And so what 3 Words does is it tells you exactly where you are on that trail, in that park, in that field, in that school. So much so that my office, where I'm sitting right now, has a different 3-word grid than if I was at the door to my office, so that the first responders, those who want to help you, can know exactly where you are. And then it just interfaces with your iPhones or your whatever phone you're using's operating system to map the direct route to where you are. So if you're going to have I think it's one of the best like personal safety applications like on the marketplace today. And again, not sponsored, but I just like anything that can help others to succeed in staying safe. I'm happy to champion. But to your point, where do the kids go? They go where they know to go. And that should be something that is that should be something that's part of your family's emergency, readiness plan, that, hey, if something happens at the school, you're going to go here so that so that family reunification can be that much more effective.
Great. And that's a really good idea. And I will say to the people who are listening to this, who are like, oh, this is very dark, this is very scary. You make a fire escape plan for your home. And that doesn't mean that you're wishing that your house is going to catch on fire. Just because you make one of these plans with your kids about, an active shooter situation at your school doesn't mean that you are willing this to happen. You're just being prepared for it. So Spencer, let me ask you this. Kind of walk us through, because I know people are listening to this. They have this question. What do I tell my kids if they hear gunshots in their school?
So when you say like, what do they do if they hear gunshots? Like, do your children know what gunshots sound like? So one of the things I always champion is, if you see a threat, act. If you think there's a threat, think. Because what you want to do, if you see a threat, you want to put as much time and distance between that threat and you as possible. Because I see the threat, I don't want to be there, I want to be far away. But if you just think that you hear gunshots, was it a gunshot? Was it a car backfiring? Was it just one shot and it was because someone was committing suicide and now there's no more threat? Or is it multiple gunshots and the sound is getting louder? So you don't want to get yourself into that framework where if this, then that. What you do want to get into is the if this and this and this, then that type of thing. Because, there was a situation in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago where there was a shooting outside the stadium. People panicked thinking that the threat was inside the stadium, ran out the stadium and actually put themselves in harm's way because everyone wasn't, they were just responding to what they were being told or what they thought they knew and not what they could actually see with their own eyes. And not to get too technical, but like when like you hear a helicopter or a plane flying up ahead, and then you look and it's actually like on the opposite side. Like gunshots are the same way, because they echo and they reverberate off of, especially in urban settings or in buildings or whatnot. So like, trust your eyes, but question your ears, so that you can make the most informed decision possible. Because the more information you have, but if you hear a gunshot, like, don't ignore it. Like, what was that? Be inquisitive, ask around. Is there an announcement that's going to come on that says, hey, they were just doing some work in the boiler room and someone dropped something? Or, but if someone also says like, hey, there's an active shooter in the cafeteria, and that the cafeteria is on the other side of the school, get out of that school, but run in the opposite direction of the cafeteria, so that you're, again, putting as much time and distance between you and the threat as possible.
Right. And I like that. I like that if you see the threat, you have to act. If you just hear of the threat, you need to think. And that's good to keep in mind. So, Spencer, as we wrap up here, we talked about that your parents were educators. I know that there are teachers listening to this show. What would you tell the teachers? What's your opinion of what they should do if they hear gunshots?
Well, I think teachers are going to have to decide for themselves what they want to do and what they are comfortable doing. If you take that teacher who is out in Indiana, she was very comfortable being proactive and taking control, and other teachers may not feel so comfortable. But what you don't want to do is have it be a literal trial by fire. Listen, each one of us, when we get into our cars, puts on our seatbelt, not because we're expecting to get into an accident, but because we want to have safety measures in place, because we do. Each one of us, knows that if there's a fire in our house, how we're going to get out of our house. Teachers should also, if there's I think they have to, take into account a couple different scenarios. One, is there a shooting? If someone in my classroom has a weapon, what am I going to do? If someone, in another classroom has a weapon, what am I going to do? And if I just simply hear gunshots, what am I going to do? What is the school going to do? And what are you going to do that will either align with what the school wants or go against what the school wants? And then, how are you going to convey those instructions to your students? Because basically, the likelihood of it happening is very low, but that doesn't mean you can just shirk your responsibility for what to do should that risk become a reality. But ultimately, whatever you decide to do, practice it, rehearse it, go through it in your head, make sure you have the talking points down, make sure you stay calm, make sure you stay in control, because it's one thing to have a plan in your head, and it's another thing entirely to have to put that plan into practice under duress. So, maybe you just kind of follow the airline model. Hey, if this happens, this is what we're going to do. Trust the captain, trust the crew, and we'll get you to safety. We don't want to instill the children with fear, but we do want to empower them with participation in their own protection. And teachers are ultimately going to be the leaders for those students in those moments. And so the more training, the more awareness, the more preparation they have, the better they will be to ensure the certainty of safety for everyone involved.
Right. And I think this also kind of lends itself to where we started our discussion. When teachers see a child who is having a hard time, who understands, oh, wait a minute, this kid has a terrible home life. He's very distraught. He's not making friends. He's not talking, and intervening in a very positive way to help that kid. One, to maybe, okay, stop that they're the 1 in 1,000 person that could actually, commit an active shooting, or just to generally make the kid's life better and help them to learn. And that whole act of kindness thing that you talked about,
it goes so far. It goes so far, not for teachers, but just us as friends, as family, as countrymen, as members of our own community. Like, a simple act of kindness goes a long way, long way.
Spencer, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your expertise. Tell everybody here where they can find out more about you.
The book is still selling well. It's The Safety Trap. It's available at wherever your favorite books are sold. It's available as a hardcover. It's available as Audible. I did the audio recording myself. It's also available as on Kindle as an ebook. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Goodreads, your local bookshop would be great. The business is Coursen Security Group. I'm at CoursenSecurityGroup.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on all the socials now. As I've now become a forward-facing, public-facing individual, which is still an interesting thing to get my head around. But yeah,
Sure
thesafetytrap.com, CoursenSecurityGroup.com. Andy, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Cheers, my
Absolutely,
friend.
man. Absolutely. And I'll pick at you real quick here. When I have a guest on my show, I always know that my guest is going to know more than me. So I'm happy to just hand that over to them and they're going to educate everybody. What I am not used to when I'm on my show is being outvoiced by my guest. And when did the recording, brought up doing the recording for your book and all. And when I talked to you for the first time, before we did the show, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy sounds better than me. I'm really not used to that. So,
well, I appreciate that. I have a face for radio.
Yeah. Spencer, I appreciate you. The book is The Safety Trap. I have read it cover to cover. I have reread portions of it. I think that every family should pick this book up and read it and really apply what's in it. So, sir, thank you very much.
Andy, pleasure, my friend. Cheers.